Welcome back, everybody. Tom Roten Morning Show, News Radio 800 WVHU, and online 800WVHU.com. You know, we had the water emergency back in January here in this area, where some 300,000 customers were without clean water for a number of weeks. It disrupted people's lives unbelievably. We're getting ready to go into what could be a very harsh winter. And, you know, sometimes we've had situations where people have been stranded. We've had situations where there's been ice storms and that type of thing, and people have been without power for a number of days. And we've seen the type of panic that sometimes ensues during those type of emergencies. Well, whatever it is that happens, it would be good to be prepared for that. And that's why we've asked somebody to share a little bit of her knowledge. Kylene Jones and her husband, Jonathan, have written a really good book with good, common sense, useful information. It's called The Provident Prepper. Go to theprovidentprepper.com. And Kylene Jones, good morning. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, Tom. Thank you for having me on. And it's actually .org.
.org. I'm
Yes.
sorry. I got you.
No, you're all good.
Well, listen, the common sense approach here to preparing for emergencies. What made you want to write this book?
You know, we have a family, and as we watch the world around us, we just had a growing concern for the different events that could occur that could really hurt our family. And so we wanted to prepare, and we started going to all different kinds of classes and looking for resources, and there's a lot of confusion out there, and there's a lot of misinformation. And so the more we researched, the more we got involved with it, and the more we decided that we really needed to write a good reference book that was just real information for real people in real situations. My husband and I have been on the board of directors for the American Civil Defense Association, which is a great organization, but it taught us a lot. And I'm currently the editor for the Journal of Civil Defense, which gives me a broad spectrum of a whole bunch of different really good information and really good people who really understand how to prep. And so what we've done is we've taken all the information that we thought was important just for your average family to be able to prepare and put it into a book that actually flows really well and is easy to reference.
That sounds good. And, you know, there's a lot of good practical tips here. Have you ever been faced with an emergency situation, you and your family?
We have, well, but none of them have ever turned out to be real horrible disasters because we have prepared. So we actually turned out our power was supposed to be for a week, but I bailed at 4 days to see what it would be like to live without power in the dead of winter without any alternative heat source. And we talk about that a little bit in the book.
Right.
I have personally lived through a couple earthquakes in California, which didn't affect me as much because we were prepared.
Well, that's good.
So,
sure, yeah. Well, let's talk about, I guess, one of the most practical things you can think of, and one of the things that you have to have in any type of emergency is water, clean, safe water.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Water storage is just critical. And the nice thing about it is one of the least expensive things that you can do to prepare. We really advocate people storing at least 2 gallons per person per day for however long they feel they need to be prepared for. We kind of do a risk assessment at the beginning of the book, and so you decide kind of what your risks are. In West Virginia, you've got a huge risk for winter storms, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so 2 weeks would be a bare minimum of the amount of water that I would store. Mm-hmm. Your recent disaster where you were without water for all that time would really make people rethink maybe a month is a better number
mm-hmm.
for you guys there. And it can be done. Water does take up a lot of space. It's heavy. But you can do it free if you are filling up soda bottles, clean soda or juice bottles. You want to never, ever use milk cartons. There's bacteria in them, and they are actually engineered to degrade.
Mm-hmm.
But you can do food-grade water barrels. There's a lot of different things that you can do to store a lot of water very safely. Mm-hmm. One of the things that we have taught is the use of something called calcium hypochlorite. It is a powdered pool shock. It's very inexpensive, and a 1-pound bag can actually disinfect 10,000 gallons of water. It's got so the shelf life makes it really good. Your bleach that you have that you can use to disinfect your water only has a shelf life of 6 months, and if it's thick, it's got the splashless version that's thicker or has any scents, none of those are good for disinfecting water. So it really is best to use something different. Now, calcium hypochlorite, just like chlorine, will not deactivate cryptosporidium, so there are a few drawbacks of that. But that is one of the things that we teach in our book about water disinfection. The other is something called SODIS. And you can go to sodis.ch and learn about it. But millions of people in third world countries actually use the sun to disinfect their water. It's a really cool technique that a lot of people don't know about.
And we can learn about that in the book?
Absolutely.
Oh, wow. Cool. All right. Look forward to that. Okay. Well, I guess if we got water down, we got to have something to eat, Kylene. Me and my family like to eat. So what are we going to do for a few days, a few weeks, or a few months? Hopefully not, but if we need food.
The best thing, I think, is to actually have a 3-month supply in your pantry of food that you eat every day. It's great to have longer-term storage, and in our book we really encourage you to do that. But if you have a good supply of the shelf-stable canned foods that you eat every day, any type of mini disaster, whether it's unemployment or a power outage or some short-term disaster, you're not going to interrupt the way that your family eats normally, because your family probably eats differently than mine. And that's okay, but we need to design our food storage plans just for that, to accommodate that. And canned foods will store for a really long time. You've got a minimum of a 2-year shelf life. But in the book, we talk about some studies that were done that show that canned foods that are stored appropriately can last for a very long time, 10 years more, and be edible well after that. Not that I'm advocating doing that, but they are edible. And so it's a really good thing to have a really good stock of canned foods, especially because you could eat them straight out of the can if you couldn't heat them up, if you didn't have the ability or the fuel to do that. Right.
Yeah, and I think people kind of wish that they canned their deer meat when their freezer went out a few years ago, when we had an ice storm and people were without electricity for several weeks. They thought, well, we got some meat in the freezer. Well, not if your electricity doesn't work. So might be better off to do some canning. Okay.
Do some of that. And can I offer one other suggestion?
Sure.
If you do have that kind of event occur and you have the ability to pressure can your meat, go ahead and take that frozen meat and pressure can it. It's not the best. Ideally, you want to pressure can fresh meat.
Right.
But it would still save that meat and allow you to eat it during your crisis period and not have it go to waste, as long as you've got the fuel to do it and the tools.
Well, let's talk about when you do need to cook your food, but you don't necessarily have the means to do it. Are there some ways that we can think outside the box to be able to do that?
Yeah, in our book we discuss all kinds of different storage fuels. Having a solar oven is a really good thing. Here where we live, it's good solar weather, and so even when it's 10 degrees in the middle of winter, as long as there's not heavy overcast, I can cook in my solar oven, and it's just a really cool thing because it doesn't use any other fuel other than the sun. In West Virginia, you don't have quite the ideal solar cooking abilities that we have here, but you could still do it.
Yeah.
One of my very favorite fuels is alcohol to cook inside with. And if you look in the caterer section at, for instance, Sam's Club or some of those big warehouse stores, they sell cases of something called Safe Heat, which is a canned alcohol that caterers use. And you can use that indoors to heat your food.
Wow.
It stores really well. It stores very safely. We talk about it in the book and on our website. But for me, that's one of the very nice, safe things to store without a lot of other expensive appliances to put it in.
Yeah, and speaking of that website, it's the ProvidentPrepper.org. Some great information there. And, you can also, there's a link to get the book as well, the Provident Prepper, Common Sense Guide to Preparing for Emergencies by my guest, Kylene Jones, and her husband, Jonathan. So you guys got into this just, because you wanted to take care of your family. And, I know there's a lot of, TV shows and people out there that are talking about prepping, in case there's some kind of national situation or, God forbid the Ebola crisis just goes just unbelievably bad and there's some type of, shelter in place or, national quarantine or something like that. Hopefully nothing like that happens. But you're just talking, look, yeah, you can be prepared for that, but it might be even more common sense and practical just to be prepared for things that happen that are going to happen. The electricity is going to go out sometime. That there's a chance you're going to lose your job. There's a chance that you could be somewhere where you're without water or food. So you're just talking about common sense things for emergencies.
Absolutely. And if you do those, then you are prepared for the larger events. If you first get your 3-month supply and then you end up with a year's supply of longer-term storage as you work through this, then could you actually self-isolate for a year if there was a really serious pandemic? So as you take these baby steps to prepare for all this other stuff, then you can do a little bit more to prepare a little bit longer term. We want to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. We want to be able to take care of our families and not be dependent upon somebody else coming to rush in as a knight in shining armor to save us. And so as we take those steps and prepare for all this short-term stuff, then we can prepare for the longer-term events that might happen and reduce our risks.
Yep, absolutely. And by the way, you got a blog on your website, and you blog about Ebola as well. So some good information there that folks can check out. Again, theprovidentprepper.org. And it's with Jonathan, Kylene Jones, and we've been talking to Kylene. The book, The Provident Prepper, you can get that. Just go to that website, and there'll be a link there, or you can go to Amazon and get it as well. Kylene, thanks a lot. I really appreciate you coming on. Great information.
Oh, thank you, Tom. I really appreciate it. And I am so glad that you guys are interested in preparing.
Absolutely. Got to be prepared. All right. Take care, Kylene.
Yep. All right. Thanks, Tom. Have a great day.
Okay. Back in a moment on the Tom Roten Morning Show.